Hello and welcome back to the Tech River, the podcast where we talk about everything to do with tech. Phones, servers, networking, you name it. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm your host, Tim. And today we're going to be talking about the new, redesigned, highly needed, M2 MacBook Air. Now, this has gone on pre-order. It's going on pre-order at 10 p.m. AEST today, the 8th of June.
That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. So in the US, it might be slightly different for you. So just check it in your local time zone.
Yep. Go to apple.com and it should come up when you click on the Mac section. And they will be available, at least for us here in Australia, on the 15th of July.
Which is next Friday.
Yep, so that's 1 week. So when they're available, that means that you can get them in Apple stores.
And they'll start delivering.
And they'll start, shipping them out and posting them. And I believe you can also do click and collect. Of course, all of this is dependent on if your local Apple store has stock, but they're also available at other stores and other retailers.
Yeah, so today we were sort of just thinking we would go for a quick run through of the Apple configurator and some of the recommended configurations and some things that we might personally avoid if you're pre-ordering one of these.
Yep. So the first thing I think we should just say straight out of the gate, if you've seen our first episode, is don't get the 256GB model.
Yeah, so if you haven't already heard the first episode, go and check it out. But what we essentially were talking about is they've found out that the new Mac, at least the 13-inch MacBook Pro, on the base model 256GB model, it's actually half the SSD speed of the previous one because they've got one less NAND chip. So yeah, check that podcast out if you haven't already listened to it. But I think it's a pretty safe bet that if they've done that on the Pro, they'll probably do it on the Air. We will have to wait for reviews for that.
Yes, so we don't know yet.
Yep. So, but and to be honest, if you're going to buy one of these, I'd probably recommend waiting for reviews. I generally advise against pre-ordering, but if you need it straight away and you can't wait, then yeah, we're going to discuss some of these configurations. So the first change I would make, because when you're on the website, and you can follow along if you would like.
Yep. We will leave links to this in the description.
Yeah. So there's two main options. There's one with the 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, 8GB of RAM, and 256GB of storage.
This is, of course, for the MacBook Air.
Yep. And then the higher tier is 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, so the full M2 chip, 8GB of RAM, and 512GB of storage. Now, my recommendation would be jump into the base model and then you can upgrade from there with what you need. So if you click on the base model,
the select button on that menu there.
Yep, when you go through, the first change the first thing you'll see is the type of processor. I personally wouldn't upgrade to the full M2 chip because this is a fanless design. You're probably not going to be able to take advantage of the extra 2 GPU cores because it will create more heat on the system. So I'd probably suggest just staying with the base 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU. That should be more than enough for users of this computer, especially considering it's just a base model MacBook Air.
If you're a Pro user, get the Pro laptop, and there's a whole nother debate you can say about the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, if you should just go for the 14-inch. Personally, I would say if you have the Pro workflow and you know you need that performance,
14-inch.
Go for the 14-inch MacBook.
So if you're looking at getting the 13-inch Pro, but you just want to get it because it's got the Pro name in it, just get the Air. It's better in every way, except maybe slightly more thermal throttling. But if you are actually a pro needing a pro workflow, then go the higher tier 14-inch if you can.
Definitely the 14-inch.
Now, if we look at the memory here, for the uses of this computer, 8GB is probably enough, but if you want to future-proof it a little bit and get a bit more out of your machine, if you want to do more multitasking, bumping it up to 16GB might be a worthy upgrade.
However, do bear in mind that is going to cost a fair bit to bump it up.
Yeah, I generally, you probably don't need it, but 16GB might be a good option if you're doing, a lot of things at once. But I definitely wouldn't go 24GB. That just... that's overkill for what this computer is.
Yes, and I just pulled it up here for the Australian listeners. It's a $300 upgrade for extra RAM and extra storage, and for our American viewers, it's $200 for more RAM or more storage.
Yep. So 8 or 16 gigabytes, you probably can't go too wrong there, but just don't go to 24 gig.
That's overkill.
So if we start moving on to the storage section, as we mentioned earlier, I'd probably suggest bumping it up to 512 gigs of storage. Now, I know it's another pricey upgrade, so if you're going to bump it up to 512 gigs of storage, maybe then don't bump up the RAM, because if you make those two upgrades, you're getting quite close then to 14-inch MacBook Pro money.
Yes.
At that point, that gets 32 gigs of RAM. You got much better everything. So it might be worth then jumping up to that. So
and you get ports on the 14-inch.
Yeah, upgrade either the storage or the RAM. I probably wouldn't upgrade both. But in this case, I think upgrading the storage would be more beneficial because you get then the extra speed. So 512 gigs of storage is probably a good idea.
And you're probably going to want to future-proof, because like at the moment, 256 gigabytes of storage does not get you very far, and I can imagine in the next 3 years, 256 gigs of storage is just going to go like that.
Yeah, it's really not enough as it is right now if you're doing any sort of video editing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, you might want to wait for reviews to check, because there's every chance that the storage isn't limited and then there's no need to make that upgrade. This is just based on speculation and what we know now. So by no means is this like a perfect buyer's guide or anything. This is just our opinion of what we would probably do if we were buying one of these.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
And the next section, if you keep scrolling down, is you get to choose what power adapter you get. So Apple generously now does include the charging brick in the box, and you can choose which one that is. So you have 3 options. You have the standard 30-watt USB-C power adapter, so you will get the MagSafe. So,
but that's a slow charge brick, so
yes.
I probably would steer clear of that.
Yeah, so that's going to charge your Mac quite slowly. So
for an extra 30 Australian dollars, I think it might be 20 US dollars. Tim, can you confirm that?
Yep, it's an extra $20 US.
Yep. And for an extra 20 US or 30 Australian, you can either get the 35-watt dual USB-C port power adapter.
So that has 2 USB-C ports on it.
Yeah, that's brand new. That was just released by Apple at WWDC.
Yes, so that means that you can charge your Mac, your new Mac, and say your phone off the one brick.
Yeah. And the alternate is the 67-watt USB-C fast charger, which is also the same price. So this really depends on whether you need faster charging or whether it's more valuable to you having multiple devices charging at once from one brick.
And that 67-watt fast charger can charge the MacBook Air up to 50% in half an hour.
Now, just be aware that the 35-watt dual port one, that's 35 watts that has to split between your two devices. So by the time that your Mac actually gets it, you might only be getting 17.5 or 20 watts, or I think they do prioritize the Mac over something like AirPods or an iPhone, but just be aware you're not going to get that full 35 watts if you're charging another device at the same time.
Yeah. So there's a few smaller things that you can change.
Now, those 2 power brick options come as a free upgrade if you have the M2 chip with the upgrade GPU.
We probably should have said that.
And 512 gigs of storage. But as I mentioned earlier, I probably wouldn't recommend the upgrade CPU, and the power adapters are only extra, not much extra anyway, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So as I hinted to earlier, before I realised that we hadn't actually said how the power adapter pricing will work, there are a few smaller things you can come in and change. So you can change the keyboard layout. All of them will have Touch ID and a full-size function row. So if you're someone who hates the touch bar, you can rejoice because there is no touch bar. It's a full height row of function keys, and you can come in here and change it to like an Arabic style or a Japanese or a British style. I would normally leave that with whatever region you are in. In my case, that would be US English. And you also have some options to pay for some pre-installed software, like video editing, Final Cut Pro, music creation, Logic Pro.
So if you know you want these, you can add it for convenience. However, these can always be purchased after you've got your machine anyway. So you don't necessarily have to buy it straight away.
If you're doing really heavy work in either of those professional programs, I would definitely say that you should probably be looking towards the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Yeah.
If you're just a casual user, you've got your free options of iMovie and GarageBand.
Which are very good.
They're
Especially
good
for
for
free.
just basic users.
Yeah.
But if you're doing anything professional, you can, like, the computer will be able to run these fine. But if you're doing really professional workflows in either of these applications, then I probably would suggest maybe going for a higher tier 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro.
Yep. So that brings us to the end of all of the configurations. So,
you can also choose the colour. I know that's a very important
Oh, yes.
thing.
How did we forget the
You've
colour?
got silver, space grey, starlight, or midnight. My personal favourite is midnight. It's a brand new colour. It looks really nice. It's like a dark sort of blue.
It's kind of like a matte, yeah. I'm going to be waiting to see them in store because at first I wanted space grey, but now I want to see midnight.
Yeah, I did hear that they're potentially midnight could, like, from some of the early reviewers when they're at WWDC, that they could smudge and fingerprint easily. But look, we'll just wait for the reviews to make a final judgment on that. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps us up on the Apple Configurators page. Hopefully this was helpful and it gave you a good insight as to what configurations you might want to choose.
Yes, and just remember that the pre-orders are starting, at least in Australia, 10 p.m. tonight.
Which if you might want to get in quickly if you want to secure yours, because I think these will sell out fast, especially with the chip shortage.
In America, it is starting at 5 a.m.
Pacific
Daylight Time on the 8th as well, and they are available on the same day in America. So yeah, if you really want this and you know, like, you really have your heart set on it, regardless of how it ends up performing, you're going to have to get in quick at those times. So definitely be, like, on the Apple website mashing the refresh key.
Otherwise, if you're a bit more conservative and you don't need it straight away, definitely wait for reviews. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to the Tech River. It was great to have some company with this episode. And how about you go ahead and share the podcast with someone you know, especially if they're looking at picking up one of these new M2 MacBook Airs. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.